Hey everyone, so I always get questions about the plants in my aquariums. Well, more so the plants on top of my aquariums. I try to include plants in all my aquariums because they're very beneficial to the ecosystem that we're trying to sustain. Besides manual water changes, plants are the only other way to remove harmful nitrates produced by our fish. On top of being a natural filter, plants add a more natural aesthetic to the aquarium and create a more realistic habitat for your fish. Aquatic plants are great, but a lot of the fish that I keep don't respect them. My herbivore fish, like my vieja, they will eat any aquatic plant that I add to their aquarium, while my predator fish, they don't like plants that block their line of sight, so if I add any underwater plants into their tank, they will most likely destroy them. For me, the alternative was terrestrial plants. Plants that sit at the surface of the water with their roots growing in the tank. With their leaves above the water, the fish normally don't bother the roots, so I've had a lot of success with terrestrial plants. Now, what terrestrial plants do I use? I've been experimenting with my houseplants, and there's actually quite a few houseplants that can live in your aquarium. Some plants don't like it at all, and they will die if you put them into your tank. I'll share some of those at the end of this video, but many houseplants will do well in your aquarium. Today I want to share my top 5 houseplants for your tank, and this is based on how easy the plant is to care for, the aesthetics of the plant, propagating the plant, and I'll give pros and cons with each plant. You'll likely see more than 5 plants today, but we're going to start off with my top 5. First off, we have the Boston Fern. This particular plant is grown above my 210 gallon tank. Of all the houseplants that I've incorporated into my aquariums, the Boston Fern definitely offers the best aesthetics in my opinion. This plant has sharp triangular leaves that for some reason remind me of the prehistoric era. The pros of this plant is that it looks amazing. The roots don't get as wild as other plants. It produces baby plants as runners, making it very easy to propagate. And this plant can grow on almost any surface as long as it's damp. Like mine in this aquarium is grown on a piece of driftwood that's about 5 inches above the water, but it stays damp and the plant stays happy. The main con of the Boston Fern is that it sheds leaves a lot. A plant this size sheds about 20 to 30 leaves a day, making it pretty high maintenance collecting those leaves from the tank. I used to keep Boston Ferns on 4 of my aquariums. I reduced my collection to just this one tank because the plant sheds too much and it proved to be too much maintenance. Another con is that the Boston Fern can and will try to go to 3 feet in diameter, which isn't ideal for most aquariums, so they'll need to be trimmed every few months. Next, this is a Croton Petra plant. These plants have the potential to show a nice mix of red and orange colors on their leaves. My plant has green leaves because I probably need to dose more iron and other nutrients to support those warmer colors, but even without the reds, this plant is happy and produces new leaves every month. The pros of this plant is that it has a unique leaf shape that can produce bright colors if you add the needed supplements. Also, it doesn't grow as aggressive as other plants, so maintenance should be very low. The only con is that this plant doesn't really have a reduced profile. It only produces larger leaves that grow stacked, so the light on your aquarium will need to be suspended at least 1 foot above the tank to compensate the growth pattern of this plant, or the plant will just need access to natural light. A plant that everyone knows of is Pothos. It's definitely the best houseplant to start with if you're new to this. Pothos is a very hardy vining plant with many varieties. It can be propagated just by taking a cutting of its stem. This plant is also good for small areas in and around your tank. Like I like to grow mine and some of my hang on the bag filters. If given natural light, Pothos can get huge. So you can see right here we have this piece of Pothos coming out and it's climbing. And this plant travels about 8 feet away from the aquarium. We have this stem coming out and it reaches all the way over here. It's hard to see with all the light. But we have these massive leaves being produced from this plant that's inside the aquarium. Now this plant likes to wander, which is cool, but over time it can be hazardous because this plant can grow over power outlets, so you definitely got to pay close attention to where this plant is growing. Also, when these plants climb walls, they use aerial roots which stick to the wall, which are attached pretty well, so if you ever want to move the plant, there's a good chance you're going to be peeling some paint off the walls. Next we have the Swiss cheese plant, Monstera Adansonii. This plant is very similar to Pothos, being a vine plant that does great in water. The difference being that this plant grows holes in the leaves, making it stand out in a canopy of plants. And just a quick tip, usually plants in the same family have very similar care requirements, so if you want to discover even more aquarium friendly plants, just search for other types of Monstera. For example, another common aquarium plant is Monstera deliciosa, which gets huge. The pros of Monstera Adansonii is that it has a unique leaf design and is easy to care for. The kind is going to be just like with Pothos. This plant can wander, so it must be monitored every so often. My number one plant right now, and the one that I get asked about the most, are my peace lilies. These are taller plants with large leaves, and I can't think of any other houseplant that produces flowers as often as these plants. The plants in my 880 gallon aquarium produce about 3 new flowers each week, which is pretty incredible. The con of the peace lily is going to be its size. These plants grow very tall. Mine are close to 2 feet tall, and they only stop growing because they're reaching the ceiling. On top of growing upward, these plants also push out a lot of roots into the water. I have a peace lily in a 20 gallon tank, and the tank is cluttered with roots, so they may not be ideal for smaller tanks. Lastly, these plants grow very fast, and they'll most likely need pruning weekly once they reach their full size. So those were my top 5 houseplants that I have in my aquariums, but I do have some runner-ups. Dracaena do great in aquariums, Lucky Bamboo being the most common. I've also grown Dracaena corn plant. Dracaena offers unique leaf shapes to your aquarium, but they grow continuously upward, getting too tall and needing to be chopped at the top, which in my opinion takes away from the aesthetic of the plant. Wandering Jew is another great plant for your aquariums. They have 3 color variants: purple, purple and white, and green. They offer very nice colors and are very hardy, but they grow like weed, and you'll have to trim them weekly if you want to grow them on your aquarium. You can also grow different types of herbs in your aquarium. I'm currently growing Cuban oregano that grows very well and smells great. I've also grown mint, thyme, and basil. Herbs obviously offer multiple uses, and some can bring pleasant smells to your aquarium, but some herbs do require stronger lights to grow healthy. Fittonia is another houseplant that can do well in your aquarium. They offer bright colors and stay small and compact. The con is that they don't like their stem to be wet, just their roots, so they will do best in a planter with hydroponic clay pebbles. So those are all plants that I've tried and have been proven to do great in my aquariums. However, this was an experimental process with many plants, and some plants did not take well to the aquarium life. Spider plants are known for being great plants to propagate in water. When you take a spider plant pup and place it in water, it will develop a root system within weeks. However, I found that if you left the plant in the water for too long, it would die. So even though it propagates well in water, it's not a true aquatic plant. Similar to that, if you take a cutting of a snake plant and place it in water, it will develop roots over time. However, if you leave it in the water for too long, it will die. The same can be said with the aloe vera plant. Now, these plants are succulents which originate from dry places, so it's no surprise that these plants are not built to survive long-term in water. Lastly, another common houseplant, the ZZ plant, is another plant that propagates well in water, but a plant that if you leave it too long in water will melt away and die. So that's been a look at the houseplants that I use to better my aquariums. I've been so fascinated by the benefits of houseplants in my aquariums that I started a collection of houseplants. So not only do these leafy creatures improve my aquariums, they also improve my home, providing more oxygen, more natural art, and just peaceful vibes. I hope this video helps you find the perfect plant for your aquarium and your home. Thanks for taking the time to watch this video, and I'll catch you on the next one.